Hey guys, Gary J. And today we're looking at one of my favorite rifles, and that is the iconic 1873 Winchester. Now this is called the Winchester Model 1873 lever action rifle. And this is really an incredible gun. This is an original model 1873. A lot of history with the 1873, and it's just a really special gun. They make reproductions of them today for cowboy action competitions and stuff like that, and plinking and so forth. And so you can get a reproduction of them today. They're a lot of fun to shoot. Now, of course, this is the original model 1873. Now, looking at the history of the Winchester Model 73, I think you would have to think about the original 1860 Henry rifle. The 1860 Henry rifle gave rise to the 1866 Winchester rifle, which gave rise to the 1873 Winchester lever action rifle. And this was a new type design a little bit on the 1873. It was supposed to be an improved edition when you compare it to the 1866 Winchester and the 1860 Henry rifle. There's a lot of history with the Henry rifle, a lot of history with the 1866. And when you think of those three rifles, the first two, the 1860 Henry and the 1866 Winchester lever action rifle, and this rifle all shoot the 44 caliber cartridge. But the improvements with the 1873 are, one is that the 1860 Henry and the 1866 Winchester shot the 44 cartridge, but it was a rimfire. Those two were rimfires, and they shot a 200 grain bullet with 25 grains of black powder. This was the age before smokeless powder, so they shot black powder, and the velocity of that bullet was somewhere around 1,000 or 1,100 feet per second. And so it was, it was a little bit of speed there, but not great. And so they were rimfire. Remember that rimfire cartridges. And those cartridges were made out of copper, not brass, made out of copper, which meant they could explode, and sometimes they did from the pressure. So in 1873, the cartridge for the 1873 would be a brass cartridge. Number one, it would be a brass cartridge. And number two, it would hold 40 grains of powder instead of 25 grains of powder. And thirdly, it would be a centerfire. It would have a primer to it in the center of the cartridge. So these were a couple of advantages that the 1873 had over the 1860 Henry and the 1866 Winchester. Plus, the frame on the 1873 would be made out of steel or metal and not gunmetal, which would make the 1873 a little bit lighter and stronger than the previous rifles mentioned. And that was another good thing there. So we have a more powerful cartridge and a centerfire in the 1873. We have better metal in the 1873. And those were some of the advantages of having the 1873. Gun companies aren't what they used to be. When you ordered, or you could order the Winchester 1873, and you could have a lot of different choices on options for the 1873. For example, the barrel length. The barrel length, you could order the barrel length, I think from 14 inches to 36 inches. And that was pretty incredible. Some people like the 1873 came in 3 different models, and that was you had the carbine, which was like 20-inch barrel, and you had the rifle like this one, which was a 24-inch barrel, and then you had the third one you had was the musket 1873. So you had 3 versions there. You could put a bayonet on the musket type. So they made it very versatile. And the tubular magazine underneath this octagon barrel here, it goes all the way to the end of the barrel. You could tell Winchester, well, I want like a half of a tubular magazine. I don't want it to go all the way to the end of the barrel. You can get that kind of the length that you wanted. For whatever reason you wanted it that way. You could tell them, I don't like the sights on 1873. I want a different type of sight. And they let you choose what kind of sight you want to put on the 1873. You can say, well, the wood on the 1873, I want a pretty wood, a real colorful wood, and they would put a real colorful wood on it. The rear stock on it on the butt plate, as you see on this one, has the regular rifle curved design butt plate. You can say, well, I want the butt plate to be more like a shotgun, more flat, and they would fix that for you too. So you could get the 1873 any way you wanted it, just about. And another great thing too, because when you think of 1873, those were hard times. There were a lot of frontier people, a lot of reasons to have a really nice rifle. And rifles were kind of like cars back in those days. They were expensive. And so compared to everything else, a rifle was, how you survived. You put food on the table and for protection as well. And so it was invaluable that you have a repeating rifle that could shoot a number of rounds. And 1873 shooting the 44 cartridge could hold 15 rounds, and that was pretty impressive there. That's a lot of firepower right there. One of the interesting things to me about the 1873 was that because you're in a remote area, you're in the frontier, wherever you're at in the world, with the 1873 in the Midwest or wherever, for $5 you could get a reloading kit. So with the brass, now in 1873, which was a new concept, you would shoot your gun and you pick up your brass, and with this reloading kit that Winchester would sell you for $5, then you would have your bullets, you would have your primer, and you'd have your powder, and so you could just reload your gun, because you're in the middle of nowhere. You don't have stores on the corner everywhere. And $5 was a lot of money in 1873. Now, these rifles would cost about $35 to $55, depending on what you had customized on it. And I was looking up what it cost, what that would be equivalent to today from 1873, how much $35 is today. $35 in 1873 would be equivalent to $797, say $800 today. So that's a good bit of money right there. And if you pay $55 for a customized 1873 back in those days, that would be equivalent to about $1,253. So for, pioneers and other people, that was an incredible price there to have a gun like this. And this gun could really save your life with the firepower, that 15 rounds that it had. Now, these rifles were made from 1873 to 1923. 1873 to 1923. And that's a pretty good while. And the next model that came out by Winchester would supersede this one here, and that would be the 1892 Winchester. Now they would make about 720,000 1873 rifles. And only Lord knows only what happened to all of them. A lot of those have disappeared, rusted away, I guess. This one, actually, it's in pretty good shape. I remember this gun when I was a kid, and it was, it always looked like this. It looked really, really old, which this particular one is made in 1893. And you could, originally they come out in the 44 cartridge, and then they made them in the 3220. Now this rifle here is a model 1873 made in the 3220 cartridge, and that means it's a 32 bullet and 20 grains of powder. So this is not a big cartridge. It kind of reminds you a little bit like a 38 or something like that. And it's made for really small game and target shooting. And you'll see a lot of people using the 3220 today. They use it in cowboy competitions for target shooting, stuff like that. In these quick draw, well, kind of the competition, they shoot all kind of different targets in cowboy action competitions. And so they use the 3220 a lot in that. And they make reproduction 1873s that look like this here too, so that you can enter those competitions. They make a lot of reproduction old stuff for the cowboy competitions. And, you know, anybody who wants the old guns, but they're, you know, reproduction. Now, these rifles were used in the Indian Wars, and they were used by the frontiermen. They were used for defense, you know, defend your family and town and anything else, you know. Used a lot for hunting, and they had a lot of firepower, as I mentioned, you know. So they were just very versatile. They were kind of like the ultimate gun to have. Before that, you had black powder guns and single shots, you know, and you only had like one or two shots with those things. And I shoot a lot of black powder, so that's, you know, they're just very limited compared to something like this that shoots, you know, has 15 rounds in it. So you look at the versatility of the 1873. Again, it was very expensive. Now, another thing too is that Colt came out with their revolvers that would shoot the 44 caliber and the 3220 caliber. And the advantage of Colt coming out, and that was a good move for Colt, was that if you come out with a revolver that shoots 44, the same thing the 1860 Henry shot, and the same thing the 1866 Winchester shot, and the same thing the 1873 would shoot, you know, except it would be different in the cartridge, but on the centerfire, then it was more versatile because you wouldn't have to have two different types of calibers. You could have just same ammo and shoot the same ammo in your revolver as you did in your rifle. And that's really good. In the black powder days, a lot of people would have the same caliber pistol as they did the black powder rifle. That way you'd have the same ammo, and you got the black powder, and it's the same thing you're going to put in the pistol as you're going to put in the rifle. So, and you had the same bullets, so they're all interchangeable that way. So it made it a lot easier to have both the same caliber, pistol, revolver, and rifle. And so that was a good move by Colt to do that. Now, the military never really liked these guns for some reason. They didn't really use them, the military. But the Indian Wars, they were used a lot, and the Indians used the 1873 a lot too because they liked that firepower that it had. So it was used by the Indians against the white people, and the white people used them against the Indians, and they were kind of prolific that way, that period of time. So there's just a lot of history with the 1873, and so much more you can say about it. And we'll look at this one a little bit closer. Now, on the internal workings of the 1873 and the 1863 they are the same as the Henry rifle. Same mechanisms that work the action, same action system. So that's pretty neat. And they have a dust plate on top. We'll look at that. Okay, looking at the back of it, you see this round plate right here. Really no writing on this plate right here. And it's a nice plate. You can see the wood is old right here. Walnut. And let's see if we can see anything here. You have the writing here. See if we got that turned right. And it says basically the model 1873. Now, the later models that came out, would have Winchester trademark in model 1873. One thing about model 1873, Winchester, this was the first rifle that Winchester actually called a model, and it would be the model 1873. They didn't call the 66 Winchester model, so this was the first one they called model. And I look at this hammer and this spur here. And you got a rod here that will push out when you pull the lever down. And this is called the dust plate right here. Okay. If you pull the lever down on these rifles, this will automatically come back. And this is called the dust plate. It comes back. And if you shoot, it will stay back, so you have to manually push this forward again, and that just keeps dust and sand from blowing in here, and that's what that does. And of course you load it through here, the gate right here, and the bullet's pretty short on these right here. It kind of reminds me of a 38 a little bit. And we see our lever here and trigger, and even has a locking pin right here, which is pretty neat to lock your lever into place right there. Back in 1873, you're riding in wagons and everything else, and the gun is shaking. I guess you could worry about the lever coming open. And you got this plate right here covering that. And right here is called an elevator. Now this right at the bottom of the rifle is called the elevator, and this is brass. It says 32 caliber. And that just protects it, and you have a feed bar that goes up to push the cartridge into the barrel. We'll look at. Okay, this is the serial number here, and what is it, 455. This puts this one at as being made in 1893. 1893 should be the date on this one here. Okay, well, the lever right here, and you just pull the lever right here, and unlike the 94 Winchesters and others where everything comes out here, you don't have that on these lever actions. Like on the 30-30 rifle, I did a video on the Winchester Model 94 30-30 rifle. All this stuff right here comes out, which this is a different system than that. Now your dust plate right here, when you pull the lever down right here, you'll see there's a rod right here that's going to push this hammer back to cock it. That's going to be your bolt, and it's going to push this dust cover back too, and you'll see the feed ramp come up. You see the rod right here pushing the hammer back, and this right here is the ramp that pushes your cartridge up right here. You see that comes up, and what's happening is that the elevator, as it's called right here, see that's moved all the way up. And once you pull your lever down, then you pull it all the way forward till it stops. You do it firmly, and then go forward, and you see the boat goes forward right here, and that locks your bolt against your cartridge right here. And of course your hammer's all the way back. All you do is pull the trigger to shoot. And after you shoot, or before you know, if you got time, then you would push your dust plate all the way forward. But make sure you push the dust plate forward after you shoot. And that gives it a chance right here to check the trigger pull on this, because it's really nice. Okay, I've got a rag in here between the hammer and the firing pin so it doesn't strike that. And we're going to test the trigger pull on this. Now, my Winchester 3030s, I got 3 of them, and I did a couple of videos on the commemorative and the pre-64 3030. Trigger pull on those were 4 pounds. I got a feeling this one's going to be close to that. Let's see how bad I'm on. I'll just help us turn it upside down. I'll get that in focus. Well, that's really 5 pounds on this one here. All right, 5 pounds. So on the modern day, it's 4 on mine, and it's 5 on this one. That's pretty good. That's not hard trigger pull, so you're not going to pull yourself off too bad doing that. Now, take a look at these sights right here. These seem like if you could hold this on your target really good, you would could be really accurate as these guns can be right here. But I like the sights right here on the rear. I'll make sure you get it in focus here. And then you got kind of a simple sight down here. Like a piece of brass right here. Okay, we'll look at the barrel here. Now you got 32 caliber WCF, which is Winchester centerfire. That was one of the new things, that they had the centerfire instead of the rimfire that you had on the 1866 and 1860 Henry. And you also had writing on the barrel too. I don't know if we can read this right here. I'll tell you, the top line is in Winchester repeating arms, New Haven, Connecticut, United States. And the bottom line here on these is saying, the first word here, it's hard to say, but it's King's Improvement. I see that March 27th. It should be 1866, which is the previous Winchester version. And then October, man, I had a problem reading that. October 15th or whatever that is, 1860. And 1860 goes back to the Henry rifle. Okay, so he's talking about the Henry rifle with the 1860 there. So 1860, Henry rifle came out with this, and this rifle has the same mechanism as the Henry rifle on the action itself. And the 1866 Winchester, who bought the Henry company, well, the manufacturing company for Henry, just a few years later, after Henry came out, they bought that, and they came out with the 1866 Winchester, and then they came out with this 1873 Winchester lever action. So that's a little bit about the history of the Winchester lever action. Okay, guys, looking at the 1873 Winchester lever action rifle here, we see that this one being the 3220, which they came out in 1882 with the 3220. This one on the serial number registers as a 1893 model, which puts it about 127, 128 years old, which makes it pretty old. And just a really fantastic rifle. I hope I've given you a little bit of information on this particular rifle, and there's so much history. They have a movie called the 1873 rifle. It's a movie, and I'll give you a description of that. And it's a great movie to watch. It's all about this rifle. And I think Jimmy Stewart was one of the main actors, one of my favorite actors, played in that movie. It's a great story, all about the 1873. If you think about values on something like this, I generally I see them go from $6,000 to 20,000, and it all depends on the condition of the rifle and the year that it was made, and whether it was customized by Winchester and all of that. But these rifles are really expensive, the original ones like this. So, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you have a great and wonderful day. Gary J.